The Miami Hurricanes have added so much new talent through the transfer portal and through recruiting. But which of these newcomers are actually going to be holding down starting jobs this season?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno. I'm a University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and contributor to allhurricanes.com. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen on this Monday. We are available free wherever you get your podcasts, available free on YouTube. And thank you to the everydayers who tune in each and every day. We're with you at least 6 days a week here on Locked On Canes. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. So around 30 new players on the Miami Hurricanes, and we're not done because the transfer portal is still open and Miami is still going to be working that. But with all the newcomers we have in so far, through the transfer portal, through recruiting, and now that we're digesting everything that went on with spring football, let's talk about the players, the newcomers who are for sure starters, stone cold locks to start this year. Guys who are probable to start but still have some work to do, players who are in the mix to earn starting jobs, and players who I believe will earn significant playing time this year, but probably on a rotational basis, not likely to start. So let's go with the stone cold locks first. I can identify two newcomers, both transfers, on this Miami Hurricanes team that are essentially 100%. They already have their starting jobs locked up. Center Matt Lee, the center from UCF, he has grabbed the bull by the horns. He is firmly entrenched as Miami's top option at center and could end up being Miami's best offensive lineman this year. That's how good Matt Lee is doing so far in Coral Gables. And then the other one, similar conversation, Javion Cohen at left guard. He is a stone cold lock to start this year. And I wish we could have seen Cohen in that spring game. He picked up, I think, a minor injury or issue in the warmups, and they held him out as a precaution. Not that you see too many highlight reel plays from guards, but it would have been nice to kind of see Miami's starting offensive line out there. They were without Javion Cohen at left guard and without Inez Cooper at right guard. But Javion Cohen is someone who just arrived through the portal, who has already cemented himself as a day one starter at offensive line. Matt Lee, the same thing. So then we get into, after those two who are stone cold locks, here's a handful of players that I believe are probable to start this year, but they still have a little bit of competition, and we're going to have to get through fall camp and see how this goes. Francis Mauigoa at right tackle, the true freshman, early enrollee. So far, he's done everything. Outside of the fact that, listen, he is an 18-year-old, and for as good as he is, there's going to be some growing pains, but physically, he's ready at around 335 pounds, and he's carved out of stone, right? I mean, sometimes you talk about, that 18-year-old weighs 335. He's got the spare tire. He's got the muffin top. Nothing like that for Francis. That dude, they call him CC. He is absolutely built, but it's not just the physical side of things. He also seems to be mentally ready, at least more advanced than an early enrollee freshman would be, because talking to Alex Mirabal, his offensive line coach, he sees the field so well, he anticipates so well, and he sometimes sees things that other players on the offensive line don't see. This is a lofty comparison, but Mirabal talked about a certain Penei Sewell, who he coached at Oregon, having similar instincts and vision to what CC Mauigoa has. So, again, when you're talking about a true freshman starting on that offensive line, he's still got to get through fall camp, but CC was holding down that starting right tackle job for almost the entirety of spring football. From the third practice through the 15th practice, he was the starting right tackle, so he's almost certain to start. I think I could say the same thing about his older brother, Kiko Mauigoa, Francisco, who transferred in from Washington State. He's got a couple years of eligibility left. He's been a revelation. Very, very quick, instinctive, disruptive, hits very, very hard at Mike linebacker. Now, the thing why I don't guarantee Kiko the starting job, even though he seems to be earning that, I never rule out Corey Flagg, because Corey Flagg, he's always the underdog. He's always flying under the radar, and he's just so tough to compete with for recent linebackers who have come through Miami. So I think Kiko has more upside, and he very well end up being the starting Mike linebacker, but you always have to watch Corey Flagg. And then another one who I think is probable to start, where it's almost a certainty. I could have almost put him in the previous category, to be honest. I could have almost made this guy a stone cold lock, and that's Devontae Brown at corner, another UCF transfer. I guess you want to go after players in the transfer portal who come from a national championship caliber program like UCF, because you got two guys from UCF who could very well be starters this year. Devontae Brown, I'm expecting Brown to be a starter opposite Daryl Porter Jr., who, was a transfer from last year, so he's not a newcomer this year. So probable to start. Both Mauigoas, Devontae Brown, I think probable. Now, here are guys who are in the mix, in my opinion, who still have some work to do, but they're showing signs. These could be starting caliber players. I'm going to start with Hurricane Bain. Rueben Bain, who dominated the spring game, had 3 sacks in the spring game, dominated the spring scrimmages. This guy was taking up permanent residence in the backfield. Hopefully that's not an indictment on Miami's offensive line, and it just means, hey, Rueben Bain is so good. I think it's the latter. Rueben Bain dominated the high school ranks, was setting record after record after record at Miami Central. I think Rueben is the real deal. Also, when you talk about being physically ready, he weighs about 270 right now. So he's physically ready, Bain. And despite being 270, he's got the motor of a 230 pounder, right? He's so quick and so explosive. So, Rueben, the only reason why I don't pencil him in to be a starter is Miami has so much talent on the edge already. When you think about players like Akeem Mesidor and Nigel Kelly and Jafari Harvey, and the list goes on and on and on. But I don't rule out Bain, because he's playing so well. Even if he doesn't start, you're not going to be able to keep this guy off the field, and he can move inside and play tackle as well. He's got that versatility, and you know what? You might need that, because Miami is less stacked at defensive tackle than they are on the edge, right? A couple of other players that I feel are in the mix, and this is due to that lack of depth on the interior. Branson Deen, the transfer defensive tackle from Purdue, and Thomas Gore, the transfer D tackle from Georgia State. Both of these guys are working very, very hard. They are actually very gifted at rushing the passer from the interior, which I know is something that Lance Guidry really, really likes, because he likes to force sacks and turnovers from everywhere. The problem that these guys have, and it's well documented, is they're both a little undersized. They're both under 300 pounds, okay? So they're not going to necessarily do as much eating up running plays. So I put them in the mix only because it's really going to depend on the health and consistency of Leonard Taylor, who's coming off of injury, who is Miami's best defensive tackle when healthy. I think LT is going to be perfectly healthy by May, is what I was told. Jared Harrison Hunt, who also missed the spring, and Ahmad Moten. I think this could be a year where Ahmad Moten makes the jump. So I think as a result of that, you're possibly or probably not going to see Deen or Gore starting on the interior, but I think they're going to have to contribute a lot this year, because Miami doesn't have great numbers at that position unless they're able to pull something off big in the transfer portal. We'll see how that goes. Here are guys that I think are going to get significant playing time this year. Again, we're talking about newcomers, players who were not on the team last year, transfer portal, true freshmen. Ray Joseph. He's too explosive and too fast not to get on the field. Could end up being a big-time returner, could end up getting some reps at slot receiver this year. This guy can be a difference maker, even as a true freshman, but he won't start. Mark Fletcher at running back. He's not even on campus yet. I don't believe Fletcher's going to be the starting running back this year. I think that job is going to belong to Henry Parrish, with Don Chaney being in that mix. But Fletcher, already at 18 years old, too big, too powerful, and too complete to keep off the field. He's going to play. Bobby Washington, who's impressed me at linebacker, true freshman. He's going to play some this year. Another one, and actually one of our subtext subscribers reminded me I should put this young man into the mix as well. He's not going to start, but Riley Williams at tight end, especially if there are any lingering injury issues for Elijah Arroyo. I think Elijah is healing nicely, and if that's the case, he's going to be probably Miami's starting tight end next year with veteran Cam McCormick. That's you know what? Cam McCormick, he's in this mix as well. I almost forgot about him. 8th-year guy out of Oregon. He's going to play a lot this year. Probably won't start, though. Jaleel Skinner's going to play a lot at tight end. So Riley Williams could be an X factor. We'll see how well he plays in fall camp, but he could get some playing time this year. I think there's a number of new coming linebackers who can play. Popo Aguirre, or people always want me to call him Aguirre. And then when I call him Aguirre, everyone's like, it's Aguirre. You got to roll the R's. Popo. I'm just going to call him Popo. Malik Bryant, I think, is going to be a monster. You know, he was dealing with a minor injury throughout spring. And the pancake honcho, Samson Okunlola, he's going to get into that left tackle, offensive tackle rotation. In fact, one of our subtext subscribers thought I should have put him in the previous category instead of guys who are probably not starters, someone who's in the mix to start. I don't think that's going to happen because I think your starting left tackle is either going to be Zion Nelson if healthy or possibly Jalen Rivers. But I do think the pancake honcho is going to carve himself out some playing time this year. Let's talk some recruiting when we come back. Very, very interesting domino here in quarterback recruiting. How could this affect Miami? All of a sudden, are we getting a clearer picture of who the second Miami Hurricanes quarterback commit could be in this cycle? I'll explain what I mean when we come back here on Locked On Canes. Oh, folks, I'm having so much fun on FanDuel. Huge shout out to FanDuel for being the new sports betting partner here on the Locked On Network. And baseball is back. Grand slams, no hitters, double plays, they're all back. There's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. That's because right now, new customers can step up to the plate with a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up, place your first bet, and get a $1,000 no-sweat first bet. You get that back if you're in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. So you have nothing to lose. If you lose that first bet up to $1,000, you get it right back in your account as bonus cash. How good is that deal? So do not miss your chance to get that no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. We are available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. And thank you to the everydayers. By the way, it's still going to happen this week. It's just not going to happen today. We had to postpone to Wednesday. Judd Anderson, Miami Hurricanes quarterback commit for the class of 2024, is going to be joining us on Wednesday. And on Friday, I think we're going to have another verbal commit in Miami's 2024 class joining us. I want to make sure I get that 1,000% confirmed before I throw his name out there, but we're going to have at least 2 Miami recruiting commits on the show this week. How freaking good is that? Speaking of recruiting, 3-star quarterback who I like a lot, I've liked him for months, Luke Moga, has postponed his decision. We got a question about him actually from Mike on our subtext group chat. So Moga, who has been over the last several weeks trending away from Miami, he was scheduled to announce this Friday his verbal commitment, and he has been strongly trending towards the Oregon Ducks. Like, it seemed like a foregone conclusion. Luke Moga is going to commit to Oregon, but Oregon now has been making headway with 4-star quarterback Michael Van Buren, who I'm told sits higher on Oregon's board than Moga does. And Van Buren he's going to be visiting Oregon for the spring game this weekend. And then suddenly after that comes out, Moga decides to postpone his announcement indefinitely. On the one hand, I don't believe in coincidences, right? You know, Moga seemed sure to announce this Friday and more than likely announcing Oregon. And then suddenly Oregon is flirting with Van Buren and he's being receptive to it. And then Moga backs off. So obviously I've got to wonder what this means for Miami's chances, right? If this means Miami and then also Arizona State, who were in the mix for him, if suddenly they can kind of get back into the Moga mix. That sounds like a type of coffee or something. Mocha mix, Moga mix. If Miami can get back in there. But then a couple of hours ago, this is kind of strange to me, and I don't know what this means. It turns out that even though he's backed off of committing this weekend, Luke Moga is going to be at Oregon's spring game. Also, he's going to be at Oregon's spring game this weekend. Van Buren's going to be there. So maybe Oregon, like, they want to keep their options open. Like, they don't want to scare Moga away because they don't know for sure if Van Buren's going to pick them, because he had been trending strongly to Penn State. So, I don't know for sure if Moga wants to be part of a 2 quarterback class or if he feels insulted by this situation. But, I've got to wonder, because part of me says, hey, if he's indefinitely postponing his announcement, that's not going to happen this week. Does that mean Miami's back in the mix? But then he's still visiting Oregon this weekend. It's puzzling. Moga has visited Miami unofficially before, and it seems like he and Miami were vibing. Now, another thing to consider is, I know Miami does want to take 2 quarterbacks in this class. Moga did seem to react negatively to Anderson committing to Miami, so maybe he doesn't want to share that class or that spotlight with another quarterback. That is something to consider. But with Moga indefinitely postponing his announcement, and with things being, a little bit less clear where he stands with Oregon, this likely means Moga is going to use his official visits, which he wasn't planning to use before, because I think he was about to pick Oregon and just call it a day. So now he may open up his official visits. Miami needs to try to grab one of those, but I hope Miami can get back into the race here. And yes, Moga is not the only remaining quarterback in this class that I like. I am a huge fan of AJ Hairston from Coconut Creek Monarch. Local player. I believe he wants to be a Cane. I hope he can get that opportunity. J.C. Evans from Miami Central, former Texas kid who moved down here to play at Central. I like him as well. So there are some options out there, but Moga is one of the bigger fish remaining in the quarterback market. Now, one thing I've been asked here, who do I think Miami's next verbal commit is going to be? Because we had some momentum rolling last week. What did we go, like 4 days in a row when we had a verbal commit? We had like 5 in a matter of a couple of weeks. Who do I think the next one is going to be? A couple of strong candidates who I think are trending to Miami, who could be next on that list. A couple players I'm watching. I'm watching athlete Ricky Knight III from the Benjamin School in Palm Beach. 3-star athlete, but he projects as a defensive back. 6 foot tall, 170 pounds, really good, dangerous football player. I like him a lot. And hopefully Ricky, who's been trending to Miami, hopefully he keeps trending towards Miami. He's done his due diligence. He recently visited Florida State. So it's not like Miami's the only show in town there, but I do think the Hurricanes have at least a slight lead for him, if not a hefty lead for him. And a player who really likes Miami, 3-star offensive lineman Joseph Ionata from Calvary Christian in Clearwater, Florida. 6'5", 280-pound plus. He's got that sort of frame, can add some weight to that frame, but he's got that sort of frame that Cristobal and Mirabal really love. You notice they love going after the tall offensive linemen, where it's like everybody that they recruit is 6'5" plus on the O-line. That's the mold. Whether you play inside or outside, they like to have guys who are 6'5" plus. So I definitely look at Ionata and Ricky Knight as being candidates to be the next commit. Here's one that Miami is definitely trending for. I don't know if he's going to be announcing anytime soon. I think he might take this into the summer, as a lot of the higher ranked recruits do. And that's also a reason why I know they're going to say, oh, he's cranking up the excuse machine. Donno's making excuses for recruiting. He's talking up these 3 stars. Where are the 5 stars? Where are the 4 stars? First of all, I like the 3 stars that Miami is grabbing, because, 3 stars can sometimes be under-evaluated, can earn that 4th star, and they can develop at the next level. But one of the reasons why you're not seeing the 4s and the 5 stars, Miami's trending with a lot of these players, a lot of the 4s and 5 stars wait longer to announce, right? We're going to have a much better idea. Once we come out of the month of July, we're going to have a much better idea how Miami's doing with the 5 stars and the 4 stars. They're making a lot of good headway with 5 and 4-star defensive linemen, and with this 4-star safety, Chaminade Madonna safety Zaquan Patterson, who I like a lot. Miami makes his top 5 finalists. Heck of a player. If you can get Zaquan Patterson in the same class with Isaiah Thomas, who you already got, Miami's in really good shape at that position for this class, okay? Patterson's top 5 that he revealed last night: Miami, Florida State, Ohio State, Michigan, and Auburn. There's some heavy hitters in there, but the Hurricanes have been trending strongly for him. The on-3 tracker has Miami at over a 90% chance of grabbing him. Not that that's the gospel, because a lot of times those trends are just not, maybe not updated frequently enough, but Miami has been trending for Patterson. I believe they're in a good place for him. So I don't believe he's set an announcement date yet, but we'll have to see how this one continues to go for Miami. I want to talk about wide receiver transfer portal recruiting, and I want to answer a question that we got from one of our listeners about what's it going to take for Mario Cristobal to win over the Fairweather fans. I found that question to be interesting, and hopefully my answer will be interesting. Keep it locked right here to Locked On Canes. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts, available free on YouTube. And if you guys want to connect with the show on another level where it basically becomes like a 24-hour show, join our Subtext SMS community. We have an exclusive Locked On Canes texting community through a service called Subtext. I send the entire group anywhere between 5 to 10 updates per day. It's always scoops or interesting factoids about recruiting, on-field observations, reports, rumors, and a lot of times we give you guys a heads up on Miami verbal commits before they happen. You're going to get insight there on the Subtext chat that you're not going to believe how interesting some of this stuff is. And so the way it works is completely free for the first 2 weeks. You could do it a 14-day free trial on the Subtext chat, nothing to lose. If you like it and you think, hey, I'd like to support the show a little bit, opt into it, $4.99 a month after that. And not only do I give you guys these scoops and updates, exclusives, I give you guys previews of our episodes sometimes, but you can also chat with me there one-on-one. Like you send me a text through the Subtext service, I'll get right back to you, or I'll get back to you as soon as you can. And you guys also jump to the front of the line on the Q&A shows when you reach out to us through the Subtext. So I'm going to include a link to join our Subtext chat community in the show description below. So if you look through the show description below, this doesn't matter if you're watching us on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcasting platform, I am going to include a link on how to join our Subtext community. You're just a couple clicks away from doing that, and we will chat with you on the Subtext. So, let me see, transfer portal. So there's another wide receiver who's hit the transfer portal, and this one definitely intrigues me. I don't know where Miami stands. It's also intriguing because a lot of Colorado players are hitting the portal now. Maybe, and maybe this is what Deen wants. Maybe Deen wants to turn over the roster as much as possible, coach prime, but a lot of Colorado guys are hitting the portal. You can add Montana Lemonious-Craig, wide receiver, to that list. He has hit the transfer portal. He just balled out in their spring game. So they had their spring game, and then the next day he's like, I'm out. He had in that spring game 159 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns in the spring game. I think one of those was a 90-yard plus grab. So he got a lot of that on one play, but he really stood out. Montana Lemonious-Craig, he's a 6'2", 185-pound receiver. He's out of Southern California. In his last season, I should say, in Colorado, he had 359 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns, and he averaged nearly 16 yards per catch. So he's producing chunk plays. Now, I'm sure Miami will kick the tires on him, as they're doing their due diligence with pretty much every receiver who comes available in the portal, because that's a position Miami is prioritizing. But I have to wonder with this player, he's a Southern California kid, was just playing in Colorado in the Pac-12. Is he going to gravitate towards a program on the West Coast, or, somebody in that area like Arizona State? Is he going to gravitate towards a Western program just because of geography? So hopefully we'll learn more this week about whether Miami is interested. A player I know Miami is interested in, and this is the transfer portal wide receiver I believe Miami has the best opportunity at right now, the best chance to land, is, we talked about him on yesterday's episode if you missed it, but Xzavier Henderson, Hendo, from the University of Florida. He just hit the transfer portal out of UF a couple of days ago. He's a Miami Columbus grad, as is like half of Miami's staff, right? Cristobal, Mirabal, Alonzo Highsmith, all the Columbus crew, the Columbus Mafia. And also, there's a connection on Miami's roster. Henry Parrish is a Columbus grad, and I've heard that he and Henderson actually know each other a little bit pretty well. They have a good relationship, so that could be another thing that pulls Henderson towards Miami. He started 11 games at receiver for Florida last year, and it's not just me talking about this. Miami is considered the favorite to land Henderson in the transfer portal. So as far as where he would stand, okay, he's not an automatic starter here. Like, I don't want anyone to think that I'm proclaiming Xzavier Henderson would come in and get 1,000 receiving yards next year and break, like Charleston Rambo's records from a few years ago. I don't necessarily think he makes that much of an impact, but I think he's someone who can definitely compete to try to grab a starting job. Very good depth option. And I think he raises the floor considerably of your receiving core if you can land him. So again, I don't think he's automatically taken a starting job away from Jacoby George or Colby Young, who are both doing pretty well, but I think he can compete there and can compete to get significant playing time. Xzavier Henderson, 6'3.5", about 185 pounds. He was Florida's third leading receiver last year, 410 yards, 2 touchdowns scored, had just under 11 yards per grab. But keep in mind, I know a lot of people look at that. I think it was 10.8 yards per catch. And some people say, oh, well, he's not fast then. 10.8 yards per grab, possession guy. You also got to remember Florida's passing game last year was not exactly vertical. And I think that was one of the reasons why Hendo was a little bit frustrated. I think he wants to find a more stable quarterback situation. I think Miami can offer that this year since Tyler Van Dyke is sticking around after that little rumor mill that we had last week. And Miami definitely, there is a desire to go more vertical in the passing game than they did last year. So I think Miami has a shot with him. He's got 2 years of eligibility left, but I think his plan is to try and put up good numbers 1 year and then try to get to the NFL. So whether it's 1 or 2 years, I think he could be a good option out there. Alabama cornerback Traquan Fagans is in the portal. Miami was recruiting him a couple of years ago under Manny Diaz. He went to Bama. I think he was kind of waiting for that Bama offer, and when he got it, it was see ya. But now he's in the transfer portal. I'm getting mixed reports on how interested Miami is in him. We know that Miami contacted him. I've heard Miami might have backed off a little bit after contacting him, but his father did confirm on Twitter that Ohio State, USC, Arizona, Penn State, Georgia Tech, Miami, and a few other smaller schools have reached out to him. So he did confirm that Miami was in contact with him. And something you also consider with Traquan Fagans is his younger brother is a stud safety in the class of 2025. So this could be one of those situations where you bring in a good player who's the older brother, and that can help you recruit the stud younger brother. That worked out well for Miami with the Brown brothers, the Mauigoa brothers. The Washingtons, they're twins, so they came in together. But there's a lot of siblings on this Miami team right now, so you have to wonder if that could be something we look at as well. As expected, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because it went the way I thought it would and not good for us. But Georgia defensive tackle Bear Alexander, he is transferring to USC, not Miami. But we expected that. That was the way he's been leaning all along. Soon as he hit the portal, probably before he hit the portal, we knew he was going to be a Trojan. He made that announcement official last night. Now, our pal, Willie Thomas, asked me, what does the team have to do this season to get the fair weather fans to have confidence in Mario Cristobal? Fair weather fans, do you have to win a championship for them? Or you know what? I'll say this. If you beat Florida State this year, the fair weather fans will take notice. I'm not here for the fair weather fans. I'm here for the real ones. I'm here for the real ones who stick with Miami, good times and bad times, who understand what a rebuild means and are willing to go through that process. I'm not a big fair weather fan guy, but if you beat Florida State, then I think the fair weathers are going to start coming out of the woodwork. Okay. And a quick house cleaning note before we wrap it up, because our pal 904 has been asking me in recent days how many open scholarships the Miami Hurricanes have right now when we're talking about bringing in transfers. By my very unofficial count, I tried to count as best I could with the information I have. Miami seems to be at 81 scholarships at the moment, which means you have 4 spots open. But that assumes Miami doesn't lose anyone in the portal. And with a week left in the portal, that's a possibility. So right now you've got at least 4. And that includes, by the way, those 4 spots, that includes the true freshmen who are coming in. They are accounted for. So you have, I think, 4 scholarships open at the moment. Fun show as always, my friends. Make sure you smash that like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey, wherever you get your pods. And for the everydayers, we're going to have Judd Anderson on later this week. We're going to have another Miami Hurricanes class of 2024 commit on, and we're going to keep it rolling on Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.